The wedding was over. The guests had left. The music had faded into silence. But while everyone believed the newlyweds were heading off to their honeymoon suite, wrapped in the warm glow of their first night as husband and wife, something else was happening. Something that would shatter everything. She sat in her car, still in her wedding dress, mascara smudged from tears she didn't yet understand, watching the taillights of her husband's car disappear down a rain-soaked road. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it over the sound of the windshield wipers. And in that moment, as she made the decision to follow him into the darkness, she had no idea that by morning, nothing would ever be the same again. What she was about to discover would break her heart, challenge everything she believed about love, and force her to question whether the man she married was a stranger all along. This is a true story, and it starts with a single question that haunted her all night long. Who was he really meeting, and why? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what happened that night, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to when everything seemed perfect. When love felt like a fairy tale. And when Emily Carter believed she had finally found the one. Emily was 32 years old, a pediatric nurse at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. She was the kind of person everyone loved. Warm, compassionate, the type who remembered your birthday and brought homemade cookies to work on Mondays. Her co-workers often joked that she had a heart too big for her own good. She'd been through her share of heartbreak, a bad relationship in her 20s that left her cautious, a few failed dates that made her question if real love even existed anymore. But then she met David Mitchell, and everything changed. It was a chilly November evening at a hospital charity gala. Emily wasn't even supposed to be there. Her friend had convinced her to go at the last minute, promising it would be fun. She wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy, and spent most of the night by the appetizer table, trying not to feel out of place. That's when she noticed him. David was standing near the bar, laughing with a group of people. He was tall, with dark hair and an easy smile that made him stand out in the crowd. But it wasn't just his looks. There was something about the way he carried himself, confident but not arrogant, present but not overbearing. When their eyes met across the room, he walked over without hesitation. He introduced himself, David Mitchell, entrepreneur. He owned a small tech consulting firm that helped nonprofits modernize their operations. He was charming without trying too hard. He asked her questions and actually listened to the answers. He made her laugh, and by the end of the night, he had her number. Their first date was at a quiet Italian restaurant in Midtown. He showed up on time, held the door open, and remembered that she mentioned loving tiramisu. Over the next few months, they fell into an effortless rhythm. Coffee dates before her shifts, late-night phone calls when he traveled for work, weekends exploring the city together. He met her family. Her mother adored him. Her father, who was usually skeptical of every man Emily dated, gave his approval. David seemed almost too good to be true, and maybe that should have been the first warning sign. But Emily didn't see it. She was too caught up in the magic of it all. He proposed on a Saturday morning in April at the Botanical Garden where they'd had their third date. It wasn't elaborate, just the two of them, surrounded by blooming flowers and soft sunlight. He got down on one knee and said the words she'd been waiting to hear her whole life. She said yes without hesitation. The wedding was planned for October, a small ceremony at a historic venue in Roswell, close friends and family. Nothing extravagant, just intimate and meaningful. Emily spent months preparing. She found the perfect dress, picked out flowers, wrote her vows by hand. And through it all, David was supportive, attentive, present. But there were moments, small ones, that stuck with her. Like the time his phone rang during dinner, and he stepped outside to take the call, saying it was work, but his tone sounded strained. Or the weekend he canceled their plans last minute, claiming a family emergency but offering no details. Or the night she found an old photo tucked in his wallet of a woman and a child, and when she asked about it, He brushed it off, saying it was a colleague's family. Emily wanted to trust him, so she did. She pushed the doubts aside and focused on the wedding, on their future, on the life they were about to build together. The wedding day arrived, October 14th. The weather was perfect. Golden autumn light streamed through the windows of the venue. Emily walked down the aisle to the sound of a string quartet, her father's arm linked with hers, her heart full of hope. David stood at the altar, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. They exchanged vows. He promised to love her, protect her, stand by her side through everything. She believed every word. They kissed, the crowd cheered, and for a few hours, everything was perfect. The reception was beautiful. There was dancing and laughter and champagne toasts. Emily's best friend gave a speech that made everyone cry. David's college roommate told embarrassing stories that made everyone laugh. It felt like the happiest day of her life. But then, as the night wore on, Emily noticed something. David kept checking his phone. At first it was subtle, a quick glance during a toast, a step outside between dances. But then he started disappearing for longer stretches. 10 minutes. 15. She found him once near the back hallway, talking in hushed tones on the phone. When he saw her, he quickly ended the call and smiled, saying it was nothing, just a work thing. She wanted to believe him, but something in her gut told her otherwise. By 11 o'clock, most of the guests had left. Emily's parents hugged them goodbye. Her bridesmaids helped her pack up the leftover favors. David seemed distracted, anxious. He kept looking at his watch. She asked if he was okay. He said he was fine, just tired. They were supposed to head to a hotel downtown, where they'd spend the night before flying out to Savannah for their honeymoon. But as they walked to their cars, David stopped. He kissed her forehead and said he needed to run a quick errand. Something important. He'd meet her at the hotel in an hour. Emily felt a wave of confusion. An errand? Now? On their wedding night? She asked what it was. He hesitated. Then he said it was a surprise, something he needed to take care of before they left town. He promised he'd explain later, and before she could ask more, he got in his car and drove off. Emily stood there in the parking lot, still in her wedding dress, watching his taillights disappear into the night. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. Her mind raced. What kind of errand couldn't wait until tomorrow? Why was he being so secretive? And then she remembered the phone calls, the photo, the canceled plans, and suddenly all the small doubts she'd pushed aside came rushing back. She made a decision. She got in her car and followed him. Her hands were shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. Her heart pounded in her chest. She kept a safe distance, staying a few cars behind, terrified he'd notice her. The rain started falling, soft at first, then harder. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up. She followed him out of Roswell, onto the highway, then off an exit she didn't recognize. They drove for 20 minutes, maybe more. The roads got darker, quieter, fewer streetlights, fewer houses. Finally, David's car slowed and turned onto a narrow gravel driveway. Emily pulled over onto the side of the road, her headlights off, and watched. The house was small, a single story. The porch light was on. The windows glowed faintly from inside. David got out of his car and walked to the front door. He didn't knock. He just opened it and walked in, like he'd been there before. Emily sat frozen in her car, her breath fogging up the windshield. Her mind screamed at her to leave, to turn around and pretend she never followed him, but she couldn't. She needed to know. She got out of the car and walked toward the house, her heels sinking into the wet grass. Her wedding dress dragged behind her, heavy with rain. She crept up to the side window and peered inside, and what she saw stopped her heart. David was standing in the living room, and he wasn't alone. There was a woman, mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She was holding a young boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, who was crying softly. David wrapped his arms around them both. The woman leaned into him, the boy clung to his neck. And David, her husband, the man she'd married just hours ago, held them like they were his whole world. Emily's knees buckled. She grabbed the side of the house to steady herself. Her vision blurred, her chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. Was this his family? Did he have a secret wife, a secret child? Had everything been a lie? She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and took a photo through the window. Then another. She didn't know why. She just needed proof. Proof that this was real, that she wasn't losing her mind. She stumbled back to her car, her dress covered in mud, her makeup running down her face. She drove back to the hotel in a daze. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She was too numb, too shocked, too broken. She sat in the hotel room, still in her wedding dress, staring at the photos on her phone. And she waited. David arrived an hour later. He walked in with a smile like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just destroyed everything. Emily didn't say a word. She just held up her phone and showed him the photo. His face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. And that's when she finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest all night. Who are they? David sank onto the edge of the bed. He put his head in his hands, and after a long, heavy silence, he said the words that would change everything. That's my brother's family. Emily stared at him, confused. He looked up at her, his eyes red and full of pain. And then he began to tell her a story she never saw coming. A story about loss, loyalty, and a promise he made that he never knew how to break. And as the night stretched on, Emily realized that the truth was far more complicated, far more heartbreaking than she ever could have imagined. Because sometimes the secrets we keep aren't about betrayal. They're about protecting the people we love, even if it costs us everything. David's voice cracked as he began to explain. His brother's name was Ryan Mitchell. He was 3 years younger than David, and they'd been inseparable growing up. Ryan was the fun one, the spontaneous one, the one who made everyone laugh. He joined the army right out of high school and served 2 tours overseas. When he came back, he wasn't the same. He struggled with nightmares, with anger, with adjusting to civilian life. But he met a woman named Monica, and for a while things seemed to get better. Monica was kind and patient. She worked as a teacher's aide at an elementary school. She didn't judge Ryan for his struggles. She just loved him. They got married quietly at a courthouse. A year later, they had a son. They named him Lucas. David said that Ryan adored that boy. Lucas became his reason to keep fighting, to keep getting up every morning. But the demons were still there. And one night, after a particularly bad episode, Ryan took his own life. He left behind a note. It was short, just a few lines. He apologized to Monica, to Lucas, to David, and he asked David to promise him one thing: take care of them. David broke down when he read that note. He felt guilty, like he should have seen the signs, like he should have done more. So he made the promise. He swore he'd look after Monica and Lucas. He helped them financially, paid their rent when Monica couldn't make ends meet, bought groceries, paid for Lucas's preschool. He visited them regularly, especially on holidays and birthdays, so Lucas wouldn't feel like he'd lost everyone. But he never told anyone, not his parents, not his friends, and not Emily. He was afraid people would misunderstand, afraid they'd think he was trying to replace his brother, afraid that if Emily knew, she'd think he was still emotionally tied to another woman. So he hid it. He lied about where he was going. He made excuses, and on their wedding night, when Monica called him in tears because Lucas was having nightmares about his father again, David couldn't ignore it. He went, because he'd made a promise, and he didn't know how to break it. Emily sat there, listening to every word. Her emotions were tangled. On one hand, she understood. She could see the pain in David's eyes, the guilt, the love he had for his brother's family. But on the other hand, she felt betrayed. Not because he was helping them, but because he didn't trust her enough to tell her the truth. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she whispered. David shook his head. "I don't know. I thought you'd think I was crazy, or that I was still hung up on the past. I thought you'd leave." Emily's voice broke. "So instead you made me think you were cheating on me, on our wedding night?" David looked at her, devastated. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to tell you." Emily didn't know what to say. She was exhausted, heartbroken, confused. She told David she needed time, space, to think. He nodded and left the room. And Emily spent the rest of the night alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd just married a man she didn't really know at all. The next morning, they didn't go to Savannah. They canceled the honeymoon. Emily went home to her apartment. David stayed with a friend. For the next few days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about everything, about Monica, about Lucas, about Ryan, and about the man she married. She decided to do something that felt risky but necessary. She reached out to Monica. She found her number in David's phone records and sent her a text. "I'm David's wife. Can we talk?" Monica responded almost immediately. "Yes, please." They met at a coffee shop in East Atlanta. Monica was nervous. She kept apologizing before Emily even sat down. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause problems. I didn't know he didn't tell you." Emily took a deep breath and said, "I just need to understand. Tell me everything." And Monica did. She told Emily about Ryan, about how much he struggled after coming home, about how David had been there for them when no one else was. She explained that David wasn't just helping financially. He was showing up, playing with Lucas, reading him bedtime stories when Monica worked late shifts, being the father figure Lucas had lost. Monica started crying. "He's the reason we're still standing. I don't know what we would have done without him. He doesn't want anything from us. He just wants to keep his promise." Emily felt her heart break all over again. But this time it wasn't from betrayal. It was from understanding. She realized that David wasn't hiding a secret family. He was protecting one, and maybe, in his own broken way, he thought he was protecting her too, by keeping her separate from his grief, from his guilt, from the weight of his brother's death. But it didn't make it right, and Emily told Monica that. "I understand why he did it, but I can't be married to someone who doesn't trust me with the truth." Monica nodded. "I told him the same thing. I told him he needed to tell you, but he was scared." Emily left that meeting with more clarity, but no answers. She didn't know if she could forgive David, or if she even wanted to try. But then, 2 weeks later, something happened that changed everything. David was driving to Monica's house to drop off groceries. It was raining again. The roads were slick. A truck ran a red light at an intersection, and David's car was hit head-on. He was killed instantly. Emily got the call from the hospital. She collapsed. Her mother had to drive her there. When she arrived, Monica and Lucas were already in the waiting room. Monica was sobbing. Lucas didn't understand what was happening. He kept asking when Uncle David was coming back. Emily stood there, frozen, staring at this woman and child who had lost the only person holding them together. And in that moment, she realized something. David had been trying to carry the weight of 2 families, 2 promises, 2 lives, and it had crushed him. The funeral was small, just family and close friends. Emily stood at the front, numb. Monica sat in the back with Lucas, quiet and devastated. After the service, Emily went to David's apartment to start sorting through his things. And that's when she found it. A letter. It was in a drawer in his desk, tucked inside an envelope with her name on it. The handwriting was his. She opened it with shaking hands. The letter was dated the day before their wedding. It started with an apology. And then it explained everything. Everything he told her that night in the hotel, and more. He wrote about his guilt, about how he felt like he was failing everyone, about how much he loved her but didn't know how to let her into the darkest parts of his life. He ended the letter with a single line. "If something ever happens to me, please take care of them the way I tried to. They're family, and so are you." Emily sat on the floor of his apartment and cried. For hours, for the man she loved, for the life they didn't get to have, for the family he left behind, and for the promise he'd asked her to keep. A few days later, Emily went to see Monica. She brought the letter. She read it to her. And then she said something that surprised even herself. "I'm going to help you." Monica looked at her, confused. "What?" Emily wiped her eyes. "David asked me to, and I'm going to keep that promise." Over the next few months, Emily became a part of Monica and Lucas's life. She helped pay for Lucas's school. She visited on weekends. She became Aunt Emily. It wasn't easy. There were days when it hurt too much, days when she questioned if she was doing the right thing. But then Lucas would run up to her with a drawing he made, or Monica would thank her with tears in her eyes, and Emily would remember why she was doing it. Because love isn't just about the person you marry. It's about the people they loved and the promises they couldn't keep alone. Emily never remarried. She didn't need to. She found purpose in honoring David's memory, in being there for the family he died protecting, and in learning that sometimes the greatest act of love is finishing the story someone else started. So let me ask you this. If you were Emily, would you have followed him that night? Would you have forgiven him? Would you have kept his promise? Comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Because this story isn't just about secrets. It's about sacrifice, about loyalty, about the messy, complicated, heartbreaking reality of love. And if this story moved you, wait until you hear what we have next. Because sometimes the truth is stranger and more heartbreaking than anything we could imagine. Make sure you're subscribed, because you won't want to miss it. Thank you for watching. And remember, love isn't always what it seems, but sometimes that's exactly what makes it real.